Hello, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Live. Today, we are going to hear from a superstar. And like so many, its fame nearly led to its demise, especially when people jump on the herbal cure bandwagon. The plants truly can suffer. And this plant is Echinacea. My name's Allison from the Well Cultivated Life. Thank you for joining me here today. We have a bit of a sad tale to tell about this plant, Echinacea, which is also known as purple coneflower. And it is just an incredibly beautiful plant. I'm not always able to bring the entire plant into the show with me, but I was at the hardware store the other day, and they were taking a long time mixing up my paint. And so I wandered over to the garden center, and this plant was there, freshly arrived, calling my name. And that's when I knew that it was going to be the plant for this week. Now, this is an Echinacea purpurea, which is Eastern coneflower, and there are 9 different species of coneflower in North America. It is native to North America, and primarily it grows in the prairies. And the species that's most common out in the sort of the central part of the United States is Echinacea angustifolia, which is considered to be sort of the most valuable medicinal version of the coneflower. And then Echinacea pallida, which is the pale purple coneflower, is the third one that is used medicinally as well. Now, it has this tall and erect plant with these long, sort of lanceolate leaves on it. And it has these cones in the middle of it, which look very prickly, but they're actually somewhat soft. Once the seeds had ripened, they're much sharper. But this is how it gets its name. Echinacea or echinos is the Greek word for hedgehog, and so that's how this got its botanical name. Now, these grow mostly in like roadsides or fields and meadows, and like I said, out on the prairie, and they are very drought tolerant. And so they are probably going to be a good plant for climate change, as we have all kinds of changes to our temperature and our rainfall coming up over the next century or so, or who knows how long. But that means that these would be an excellent plant to put in an area that might be kind of dry in your garden. And they bloom, well, they're blooming now. I have some other ones out in my garden. Those are blooming now as well. And there have been a number of varieties developed over the years, like horticultural varieties, and in different colors. I'll just show you a few of the slides. So here is a nice, beautiful close-up of just this incredible plant. The combination of that kind of orange and red tipped center with this beautiful pink on the outside. They're not really purple, they're really more pink, but maybe the two combined make it look purple. And can you imagine an entire prairie filled with these? Unfortunately, there aren't that many prairies filled with these still growing, except for in preserve areas. And another thing that they are is a wonderful pollinator. As this plant is sitting outside waiting to go into the garden, I looked over the other day and there was a monarch butterfly sitting right on top of it. So I've decided to plant it right next to some of the milkweed that I have in my garden. And here are some of the different cultivars that have been developed. The white, although I don't know, that might be more of a native species. There's yellow, there's like these bright orange and electric pink colors that have been developed. But personally, I prefer the classic coneflower pink. There's also some like double petal varieties as well. So now, speaking of the native species, this was a very valued plant by Native Americans, and according to Enrique Salmon and his book Iwigara, which is the American Indian Ethnobotanical Traditions and Science. And he says that it is widely used medicinally and as an item of trade among American Indians from coast to coast. It is thought to be a powerful spirit medicine. which is why many native peoples include a piece of the root in the medicine pouches they wear around the neck or on the waist. The Navajo consider echinacea to be a life medicine, one of the 40 some ceremonial plants used at certain times and for specific ritual healing. So he goes on to say how echinacea doesn't grow where his family is from, in the Navajo tradition, but they always had it. See, it's an important thing, which just signifies how much trade was going on, as well as the importance of this plant ceremonially. Now, it was the most popular remedy used by eclectic physicians, which was a very popular type of medicine in sort of the 19th century and early part of the 20th century. And these were physicians who used a lot of botanical remedies and other substances and physical therapy practices along with their as part of their work. And so they were primarily using the Echinacea angustifolia because that had been introduced to one of the primary leaders of the group back in the mid 1800s, and was used mostly for a blood purifier, which I'll tell you a little more about in a bit. But what happened was when the AMA and other more pharmaceutical industry came in the 1930s, these types of physicians, as well as anyone doing any kind of alternative healing, were kind of shooed out, and the echinacea, as well as the other types of botanical remedies, kind of like fell off to the wayside. When my grandfather passed away, I found, he had in his bathroom, all kinds of the usual things you'd think. But the one thing that he had, and I didn't think of it till just now, but he had a little jar with echinacea on it. That was the one sort of old style remedy that I found in his medicine chest and in his house. And that was in 1989. So he still had that in there, still had that on the shelf. Now, the traditional uses for it were like snake bites and insect bites, septicemia, which is sort of like a blood poisoning, and other types of poisonings. And it turns out it's very good at moving toxicity, and it also works on boils, infections, and other sorts of kind of skin eruptions. And the eclectic said that the indications for echinacea was like this sort of disintegration of tissues, lack of vitality, depressed tissue states, and somebody who's just really worn down. So what happens is echinacea has the ability, when you get a bite by either a snake or an insect, they're inserting an enzyme that's breaking down your skin so that they can easily suck out your blood or what other nutrients they're trying to get out of you. And so that breakdown of tissues is inhibited by echinacea. And so that's another, even if it wasn't a bite, it can also be another way that any type of wound where the tissue is kind of like fallen apart and disintegrated, that echinacea actually works really well for wound healing. Perhaps it would make a good oil or salve. An extract might be a little tough to put on this, but there's always a poultice of the leaves, and there's always a tea that you can make and create. Just put that on a towel or something like that. So, according to Stephen Buhner, who has the Herbal Antibiotics book, he says echinacea is without equal in the treatment of 3 conditions: abnormal pap smear, strep throat, and the very early onset of flus and colds. And this means it's effective against staph infections, strep infections, mycobacteria, and these abnormal cells from your pap smear. Now, he specifies direct application is necessary in the case of an abnormal pap smear. But he doesn't go into any details of how exactly you're supposed to do a direct application on your cervix. I guess you're douching with echinacea tea. I don't know. Don't try this. Let me find out more about that. These are really immune system supportive properties, and I haven't really talked about that, even though that's kind of what echinacea is known for. And it, like I said at the beginning, it was made into this kind of superstar plant, maybe in like the late 80s, early 90s when it first came into really high popularity. And you've probably heard of this and may even have taken it. Oh, I'm getting a cold. I need echinacea. And um, the thing is that it's very specific how you would use it during the a cold. It has to be like the very beginning is the only time that's actually effective. And so there's kind of this terrible tale around echinacea that shows the disconnect between these sort of traditional uses and historical uses of a plant and what happens when people who aren't holistic, who are not herbalists, get a hold of a piece of information and just completely misinterpret what it means. And so in Matt Wood's book here, The Earthwise Herbal, he tells a tale. So I'm just going to read some of that. He said what happened was that echinacea was introduced onto the market as an immune stimulant because it had this one set of compounds in it, polysaccharides, which those types of compounds are known to stimulate the immune system. Great. But nobody paid any attention to how it had been used or how it was actually being effective in practice for hundreds and thousands of years, not the Native American and not the eclectics. And then even after that, it was used a lot in Germany. There was some pharmaceuticals that were using it in that way, and no one looked at that. And so it got put out on the market. And guess what? In 2005, this is his book was 2009. It sold $165 million in revenue from echinacea. So you know what happens when all of a sudden we're making money. Now people are interested, right? So suddenly there's these trials going on and they didn't use the right part of the plant and they didn't really run the trial in the way that the traditional use had been. And the studies came out and said, oh, this doesn't work the way that it's saying. This is like, false information. There's this one guy that decided he was going to really use this to his advantage to make herbalism look bad and get all the funding, taken away for doing any kind of complementary or alternative medicine. And so it turns out that, again, they didn't use it in the right way. And the the, the, the traditional sources, what I told you a little while ago, there wasn't anything about how to use it, using it in an acute situation. It really was used in these other ways. So, in my opinion, I'll give you a little drink while I'm at it. There you go. Echinacea really got caught in the middle of this battle between, the what we now call I call allopathic medicine and traditional and herbal medicine. And the thing is that you can't just take this, shove it in a pill, and try to take it like you do a pharmaceutical. It's not the same type of medicine because traditional uses of doesn't work like that. You don't just say, "Oh, you have a cold, take this." You look at the person. What's their constitution? What have they been sick lately? Are they usually pretty good in pretty good shape? What is their environment like? You look at all of these other factors before you decide on what is the best thing to use in an acute situation. So, unfortunately, that's what happened to echinacea. Now, scientists still don't agree how it works, and but they say there are some immune stimulating aspects, and then there's also some like anti-inflammatory effects from it, and there's still a lot of study going on. And the sad ending to this is that when echinacea rose to fame, that meant that all the wild echinacea now was worth some money. And so a lot of these wild harvesters, aka poachers, went out and started digging it up and really now put it at risk. It's now on the United Plant Savers at risk list, unfortunately. 7 of the 9 species in the US are now on that list. So if you are going to buy echinacea, because it does have a lot of good uses, you want to make sure that you are not buying anything that's wild harvested because you don't know what that person was responsibly harvesting or not. You want to make sure you get a cultivated echinacea. So if you are buying from a good herbal source, they will have that piece of information included with their, on their jar or on their website or wherever you're buying from. Now, the other thing, of course, is that, herbalists got a bad rap. Oh, see, your stupid medicine doesn't work, when it was their fault for not using it the right way in the first place. And so what happened was echinacea kind of ended up as the victim of all of these inappropriate uses. And that is very interesting because the truth is, this leads us right to the flower essence, because echinacea flower essence is for someone who has gone through trauma, abuse, either physical or emotional abuse, and need help to regain their sense of self, the sense of sort of personal integrity. And let's see. So one of the things it does is it helps create resiliency. And I love this example from Flower Essence Services. They said, if you take the cone in the center and you press it down, you can, I don't know if you can see that or not. I don't want to take one of them off. As I press it, it kind of just pops right up. And right now it's very soft. But that is a good example of, it's very resilient. And so Echinacea Flower Essence helps you with your resiliency. And according to Soulflower, it says that echinacea stimulates and awakens your consciousness, helping break up and release outdated personal stories. If you have trauma that happened 20 years ago, that is really not part of your story anymore unless you choose to hold on to it, right? It releases your emotions and attachments that are holding you back from positive growth and self-realization, awakening awareness of your true self when you have forgotten or lost connection. A trauma or an abuse is definitely going to be cutting you off from the fact that you are a worthy and worthwhile, unique individual. One of the things that I love, this Tree Frog Farm says that it's great at helping you let go of old self images that stagnate your energies and create dis-ease. And she says that she uses it when there's some kind of big change going on, when something's changing or there's a certain kind of growth and you're kind of like having this push pull in between the two, and a major self image is happening. Maybe you're taking on a new job and you have to let go of your old job or something like that. So she likes to use it during in that way. And Lycanwood Herbal says that it's good for anyone that's been violated by crime, physical or verbal abuse, or neglect. And it brings healing on all levels, because when we boost our core self, that's going to help our immune system. And I hate to tell you, but we are going to be going kind of long this tonight because there was so much to tell about echinacea. But we are up to the oracle card now, and today's card is from the Herb Crafter's Tarot. And let me see here. Oh, and I wanted to say that, on some of the echinacea, part of the problem why it is becoming at risk is because because it's the root. And when you dig up the root of something, you no longer have the plant. But on some of the species, the purpurea, you can actually use the flower heads or the seeds or the leaves. And so there's always a good idea to look for an alternative when something is endangered, and especially if it's root medicine. So here's our card, and it's from Herb Crafter's Tarot, and it's the Three of Air. And the threes in this deck are about our beginner, easy to grow herbs that are beneficial to pollinators. So echinacea, I think lemon balm was one of them that was in there, and calendula. And it says, tending, harvesting, and creating with these herbs inspires a lifetime journey and awakens the herb crafter to the pleasure of plants. And I thought, I am definitely awake to the pleasure of plants. So the words are: speak the truth about your heartbreak, be the medicine that heals the pierced heart. Healing from grief takes time. And here is a picture of an echinacea growing out with an old barn in the background that's and the sky is kind of raining, and it's sunny, partly raining. You can see how the old seed heads are starting to ripen in the petals are coming down, but then there's new seed heads coming out as well, or new flower buds coming out. And so the message from Echinacea is really about how crazy the world can get. They have like a whole written thing in their book, but I like to kind of interpret it for myself. And when people misinterpret things or do things incorrectly, it can lead to shaming and abuse and heartaches and grief and all of these types of things that happen to us that are part of life. But we have to contend with a lot of things, and it doesn't always have a very happy ending. And so we can make a choice in any situation. We can choose to do the right thing. We can choose to um, allow others to learn their own lesson. We can choose to recover from the pain from somebody who is in pain themselves, and we can forgive people, and we can do all of these things. But we can't make that choice if we don't accept what the situation actually is. And that's kind of what the card is talking about with the speaking the truth about your heartbreak. They're basically saying you've got to start there before you can heal. And not everyone, or I should say everyone, no one is free from some kind of trauma or pain or something like that. But we have this tendency to just embed this into ourselves. I mean, animals don't do this, plants don't do this. They have a trauma and then they just kind of release it and let it and move on and continue their growth. But we don't tend to do that as humans because we have the ability to relive it over and over and over again. And so this is where echinacea can really help you to release what happened, things that have happened, and continue your growth. So as a species, Echinacea angustifolia in particular has gone through this trauma and is still kind of in recovery for that, but each individual plant is still growing strong, right? And so on the card, it says, seek out strong allies who will help you through the process. So perhaps Echinacea should be one of your allies. I always love to talk about the herbal allies that we find that can help us to live a better, more holistic, and more free life. So that's the message from Echinacea tonight. Thanks for sticking with me on this extra long show tonight. Have a great night. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. So take care, everybody. Have a great night.